All right, everybody, so here we go with round 6, and surprisingly, I'm still facing a weaker player, and what goes through my mind is that this is a 100% a must-win game, because this is likely the only easier opponent that I will be getting for the rest of the tournament, and if I score a win, moving on 5 out of 6, that would be a massive score. And I'm certainly looking forward to take risks. And my opponent plays e4, and here we have the Caro-Kann for the first time. Caro-Kann on the board. Exchange variation. And my opponent plays the Panov. Now, I'm not very happy to see the Panov because I know it is a pretty dry variation, and already you will see me getting out of the comfort zone. Because in this position, I always play e6. This is what I recommend also in my chessable course on the Caro-Kann. But the problem with e6 is that it gives white opportunity to take on d5, where black is very solid, completely equal, but it will be very hard to play it for a win. So I deviate with knight c6, and my opponent now goes for the move bishop to g5. And for my tournament situation, I knew the best way to create an imbalanced game is to go bishop e6 and play for the fianchetto. And I'm aware that there is a small risk that after bishop e6, white goes for the trappy variation with bishop e2, bishop f3, which I knew it's possible. I couldn't really remember it, but I felt like I can figure it out along the way. In Lichess database, they play this only 10%. Surely we don't have to worry about it, right? Dude, seriously? This is the best move for white, but I didn't think it was very likely that my opponent will adjust so well to a sideline, because knowing the Panov perfectly is a bit like being a Michelin star chef that only cooks eggs. If your learning capacity is so good, why don't you do it with a better variation? Now the reason why this is one of the trappiest variations possible against the Caro-Kann is because black has a single move. Everything else would be completely lost. And you must play the somewhat strange move queen a5. Otherwise, it's pretty much close to resignable position. Queen d7, I just couldn't remember what I was supposed to play, and I tried calculating bishop f3, dc, d5, knight e5, d6, where I've pretty much just attached all my hopes on this knight d3 check. But I mean, obviously this looks super shady, and I'm aware that I'm probably not remembering my preparation, but I just need to play something. I don't have a lot of time on the clock to dive deep in the position. And at this point, you can see me trying the last trick, which is to drink a little bit of coffee, hoping that magically my memory will come back to reality. But the problem is that the harm has already been made. Queen d7 is a bad move. The biggest mistake in this game is that I didn't take that sip of cappuccino one move earlier. Maybe that would have simply brought my powers back to life. Now, after bishop f3, this is such a nasty spot that I don't have much of an alternative, because there is simply bishop f6, and then one way or another, a pawn on d5 will land, which is gonna lead to a fork. D takes on c4. d5, of course. If this guy allows me to fork him, I'll just do it. Does he not understand how a fork works? That is probably what my opponent was thinking the whole time. Knight to e5, okay, I mean, I'm losing a piece, but you know, whenever you play against a strong opponent that you have no chance against, you try to get a consolation check. You try to get a pity hug from your opponent. Little kiss on the cheek. I'm not sure I'm even gonna get that here after the e6. Knight d3. King f1. Okay, opponent not impressed. Show me the money. What's next? Are you gonna try queen d4? Threatening mate in one? Is that the genius game plan when you're down a piece? Come on, Alex Bonanza. Okay, fe. Fe, you know what? I'm down a piece, but I have a knight on d3. How about that? Maybe that is some degree of compensation. Queen a4, of course. This is exactly the type of move that an over-the-board player finds instantly. You trade the guy's queen, you have extra piece, get him into endgame. He's gonna have no chance of complicating the situation. Okay, queen a4, let's trade. Knight takes. And the way I go about it on trying to come up with a defense is that I'm telling myself, dude, if you had this white position and you played against Hikaru, he would certainly make you sweat a little bit for the win. Maybe you'd still win it, but you will have to struggle for it and second guess yourself. I'm still not 100% out of this game, just a 99%. Bishop e2. Immediately seeking trades, immediately seeking to take on d3 and then create a weak pawn that he's gonna capture. e5. Simply trying to maybe one day open up path for the bishop, but more importantly, getting ready to support the pawn on d3 with e4. So nothing more than that, just trying to do a bit of damage control. Bishop takes on d3, have to recapture. And knight c5. My opponent is playing very confidently, improving the worst placed piece while attacking my weak pawn. Now the problem is that if I go for e4, he will have simple move of removing defender of the pawn and then collect it for free. So I have only one move, rook to d8. Rook to d8, protecting d3 and setting up a bit of a trap. It may look like knight takes b7 is possible, but rook d5 and knight is almost trapped, so my opponent goes rook d1 instead. Okay, very difficult move. I mean, if I lose that pawn, it's straight up resignation time. I cannot play e4 because of bishop f6, but rook d5. Really powerful. When I play this move, I was telling myself that I'm playing a little bit like Hikaru. Like Hikaru from Temu, but still Hikaru. I mean, has to be better than Alex Bonanza. The point is that simply, if you take on d3, the knight doesn't have a square to move where it's going to protect the unprotected rook. So knight d3, I will have e4, winning back the piece. So somehow, by a miracle, this move keeps my last hope alive. The pawn on d3. You're probably asking yourself, okay, Alex, pawn on d3 cannot advance. How is that a hope? Let's not get into the details. Bishop e3, protecting the knight. Very natural play by my opponent. Now I'm dealing with potentially knight takes on b7 attempt on the radar. So b6. Opponent cannot take. The d3 pawn is hanging on like an elephant on a spider web. b6 and I see obviously opponent can play any move with large advantage. Knight a4 c3 is fine. Knight b3 is fine. More aggressive play is fine. Not required but fine. Knight e6 and king f7. Attacking the knight. Well, if knight f8 I take with the rook. Opponent gets to trade, but at least I get to finish development. I'm looking at pushing e4, getting the pawns connected. My only argument is that it will still take my opponent a bunch of time to develop all the pieces. But difficult for an argument like that to hold in court. Knight g5 and only move, I have to go king up. If I went back, it's making my development even harder, so king to g6 and knight to f3. For a second, I was afraid of this move because it appears that knight h4 is on the radar, and not only that I'm losing in a humiliating fashion, worse than usual, but I might also get my king mated without queens on the board. Which makes it exponentially more humiliating and probably top 28 most embarrassing moments of my life. Yes, the list is pretty long. e4. Realizing that knight h4 check, king h5, the king that looks to be close to getting mated may actually become an important attacking piece, threatening to eat the knight and opening up rook's path towards this guy. So I'm sure that my opponent planned to go for this move, but underestimated the power of king h5. And then I want to play rook g5 plus take the horse. So it's a very weird position. Certainly quite shocking. And my opponent goes 96. Despite missing that idea, 96 is given as a brilliant move by chess.com, trying to rescue the knight in style, preparing a fork. Not much of a choice here. I just gotta go for ef3, accept to be in an endgame where I'm down in exchange. I'm activating my king. I'm not afraid to play king f5 because we are in an endgame. And it's a big decision now whether I take on g2 intermezzo or I just take on d5. Sure, a pawn is a pawn. fg is the materialistic move. But I'm trying to understand maybe the fact that I'm allowing white to bring the h1 rook into the game so much faster can lead to deadly consequences. So since gf3, it's a pawn, but it will be doubled, I figured out it's more practical to prioritize finishing my development over taking another pawn. That's honestly quite meaningless. Rook takes d3. e6, protecting the knight. And what is so important about this knight is that it's placed on a central square. Opponent cannot get rid of it by exchanging, as his only minor piece is placed on the opposite color. And this knight, not only that it's a monster in the center, it also controls infiltration square on c7. So I see potential for setting up fortress, and gf3 has to be played. Now, bishop e7, with the simple idea of playing bishop f6, targeting weak pawns, maybe provoking b3, maybe weakening a square on c3. That is what I'm looking up to. Also preparing rook on the open file. King e2, simply preparing to bring the rook into the game. Okay. Bishop f6, attacking the b2 pawn. Rook to d2, protecting the pawn. And trying to still keep to control the c3 square. So I play rook c8. Immediately take over the open file. One move, controlling 7 squares. Just such a powerful concept. Getting to use the open files with your rooks. Already as white, not so simple. a3. a3, just sort of useful move in general. g5, fixing pawn on h2. One day, maybe I can teleport my rook. Rook h4, bishop e5. That's a vulnerable pawn. Rook d1. Rook d1, logical, normal, but you can see Eval bar all of a sudden almost even. Can I go rook c4 and get to talk with a pawn on h2? That is the question. If I can get that move, bishop d4, allowing me to check, knight f4. This knight is a scary monster. It feels like the enemy king is in a mating net. If I could get that rook into the back rank, if only we could infiltrate into the back rank, that would certainly create an unpleasant sensation for my opponent. But it is a difficult situation. If I trade bishops, any exchange is getting it closer to the endgame. However, on the other hand, if I keep bishops, it felt like my opponent can play bishop c3 and his coordination is improving. Bishop takes d4. Trading. Trading and attacking pawn. Rook to d2. Okay. Rook to d2. Important move, limiting the damage of my rook. I retreat. Very important to never trade your rook if you're down an exchange. That would be similar to resignation. So, keeping the rook. The only move to create counterplay. Rook d7. Double attack. Attacking both unprotected pawns. Which one to keep? The h pawn or the a pawn? I decide to keep the h pawn. I decide that if I'm losing queenside, I will have to some way try to win these pawns. Rook c2, knight h3, maybe win these pawns and try to generate counterplay with the h guy. I feel like keeping this pawn can be a decisive asset in view of a comeback. It's very difficult to be okay with a draw when you're up a full piece in an endgame. But my opponent, very clever decision here. He had pretty good nerves. Many players would have tilted and entering the dangerous clinches. But he actually settled on a draw, which you can tell by my face. This is a one in a million type of event. You never save such games down a piece in an endgame. This Caro-Kann was so bad that I had to be taken to the police station. So please leave a like in the comment in order to bail me out of jail so that I can participate in the next round.